Hello and welcome to Kicking Tires. My name is Jimmy,
And I'm Justin.
and today we got a quick and fast episode as there's only three different topics to go over today. So let's talk about the first thing, Ford Explorer. Well, that is not the Ford Explorer. That's the Ford Explorer.
Yeah, new Timberline trim. So just like last week, we're starting with an off-road special edition or trim line for this Explorer. Which Explorer, we were talking about it a little bit behind the scenes. I think a week or two ago, and I'm like, this new generation Explorer, it's not very exciting to me, but the sales have been decent. When we
Mhm.
look at the numbers across North America and apparently, even in Europe, they sell this model Explorer. I don't know why you would get this type of vehicle in Europe, but no, the this body style's been out for a little bit now, and now we have the new SUV off-road trim for the Timberline. So Ford is really banking on this off-road lineup, right? We have the Tremor packages on the Ranger and also on the
F-150. Well, the
no, the
trucks,
F has Super Duty, I think, and then F-150. We've always had the FX4, and
but they're
now we
getting
got
the
the
Tremor.
Bronco Tremor. So across the board with their SUVs, even the little Bronco Sport, putting a lot of off-road. I don't even know what you call it, off-road marketing in it, but it does look really cool. I think I really like this body effect. Those fender flares, the new front bumper, and it's got those grill LEDs. Um, the grill LEDs are not standard per se; they are pre-wired, but it is a dealer installed option. Maybe it's not legal in all states. That might be why. And we don't know really, but pretty cool color. This is called Forge Green Metallic, and the interior, there's a nice kind of greenish, very modern, very high tech and outdoorsy fabric looking thing. So it's like a textured, they call it Active X seat with the cloth inserts. The cloth inserts are very, you know, a few years ago, this would have been kind of old school, but now it looks kind of neat. This is like camping gear material, looks like, which I think that's the market that the Timberline is going for.
Mhm.
So it's going to be the most off-road capable Explorer ever. But I don't know how this compares to like the Explorers of yesteryear. The ones that you could just jump off of because you don't care at all about it. But this one is a little bit too nice to be the most off-road capable Explorer. It is filled with some pretty good engineering behind it, so it's not just a trim package like that Sienna we covered last week, the Woodland Edition. This Timberline, we've got some real mechanical upgrades to beef up that off-road capability. So we're seeing a Torsion limited slip rear differential, which I think makes a lot of sense in a car like this because dedicated rear locker doesn't really work on a day-to-day basis, but limited slip diff that will help you with the snow, just for kind of a city SUV and some light off-roading. Torsen diff sends power where it needs to go, and of course, we have a lot of software with the terrain management stuff that we've seen on other Ford SUV and truck products. Standard 360 camera, which is awesome for off roading because you want to be able to see all your obstacles and stuff. And standard steel skid plates, which I thought was pretty impressive for this type of SUV. Like they're taking it more serious than I would have imagined. Supposedly, I couldn't find a picture of the underbody of this SUV, but supposedly the engine, transmission, that's all covered, and they keep going further back behind the vehicle. So I don't know how far that extends, but pretty cool to see real steel skid plates on this type of vehicle. Before, I think we would typically see, plastic silver painted pieces to look like a skid plate, but real
Especially on the front.
metal skid plates, yeah, that probably is still just a plastic piece. I don't know. But the FX4 Ranger does have real skid plates up there. We also have those red tow hooks, which is just tells the world that this is an off-road dedicated vehicle. Apparently, all the manufacturers, Jeep is doing it, GM is doing it, so Ford is doing it as well. We've got different steering, sway bar stuff. Suspension is a little bit different as well. We've got the heavy-duty shocks from the Police Interceptor package Explorers, so gives it a little bit of a lift. 0.8 inch, not too bad, almost a whole inch, and a little bit extra lift from the tires as well, which are up slightly from 255 to 265 for the same series. So about 1 inch total overall ground clearance, if you think about it that way. They say the minimum ground clearance is about 8.7 inches, which is respectable for a 3-row SUV, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
23.5 degree approach angle, 23.7 degree departure angle, and this Timberline is only going to have the 2.3 liter EcoBoost engine with 300 horsepower, 310 pounds-feet of torque, paired with that 10-speed automatic. I think that's the right engine. Keeps the price point pretty reasonable. This supposedly in Canada is going to start around $50,000 and just under 51,000, which is about 5,000 more than the base model XLT. But you're getting quite a bit of feature for $5,000, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, cooler LEDs and just looks cool, and like 360 camera. I don't think you get that on the base model.
No, you definitely don't.
Yeah, and this engine's pretty efficient. I remember test driving the Ranger; it was pretty decent. Have you test driven this drivetrain?
So not this specific drivetrain. I actually had a chance to be in an Explorer hybrid recently.
Mm.
It was fine. Drives okay. The Explorer, like the best thing about the Explorer is just the overall size. The interior packaging is really well done. Where the third row is actually like for adults. I can
Oh,
sit back there and be decently comfortable. There's enough headroom as well as there's enough legroom to just be in the third row there. That's definitely a positive compared to like Highlander or the Honda Pilot.
oh, I'm surprised. It doesn't look that big to me. Like,
It doesn't look that
yeah,
big, but like it actually is decent. Like you can be back there.
mm,
Like if you're under 6 feet, you'll be okay. It's not
yeah.
comfortable, but you'll be okay. I think the biggest thing for this is the name, Timberline. They could have called it Timberland.
Or
That just
Timbaland with an A.
just better names for it. But I think it looks great. Um,
Yeah.
for some reason, this, especially in the green, it reminds me a lot of the Pathfinder, the 2022 one that's coming out.
Mm,
Because in their blurb, they also had a green Pathfinder with a roof rack and some off-roady tires, and it's just every manufacturer is kind of going this way, right?
yeah.
Subaru has the Outback that's going with that Wilderness Edition that's more off-roady. Everyone is going with this whole overland scheme that everyone's really into these days. So I'm excited to see this. $5,000
Yeah.
more, it's not a lot to be getting all these extras. And I think it looks cool. Like the wheels, I think those are
Yeah.
18s, right?
18s, yeah.
Much better than the 20s. You get a
Yeah.
softer ride. You just get a more compliant ride overall. I think
Just
this will
gives you
be
presence too with the fender flares and a
yeah,
little bit bigger tire, gloss black wheel. It looks
yeah,
really good towing that camping trailer too. Towing wise, this is really solid. 5,300 pounds towing capacity, so that will tow most camping trailers. Which this segment they don't tow that well. Explorer's always kind of been above the rest, and I think they're keeping that with this model.
well, they're keeping with the rest simply due to how the drivetrain is laid out, right? So unlike
Mhm.
a lot of mid-size SUVs where they're more well, uh, the engine is mounted sideways, not longitudinal, like the
Mm.
Explorer is, because this technically actually drives the rear wheels first,
Mm.
then the front. That's how the all-wheel drive system works, and because of that, it actually has a decent driving experience. Because the
Nice.
hybrid wasn't bad. Like, I mean, wasn't great, but wasn't as bad as Highlander was.
So that's the only other hybrid mid-size three. Well, is this mid-size 3-row
Yeah.
technically? Yeah, the full size would be the Expeditions and up, right?
Mhm.
This Explorer, I never really cared for the interior until they put in these green leather seats or pleather seats, which I think it looks. I think it just gives it more character. It's still probably not going to be the best in terms of fit and finish. You know, it's not going to be as good as a Hyundai Palisade or a Kia Telluride or a Mazda CX-9. It doesn't even it doesn't even look that great, and the screen is too small, which everyone has complained about. This is already the better one. It's not the portrait screen, which I think looks
Well, the
even
portrait screen's only available on the top trim, which I I
makes no
can't.
sense.
No, I mean this is
uh,
fine. I think in cars, a portrait screen, maybe a little bit lower down, like a Tesla, kind of makes sense. It's okay there, but when it's above on the like, it just looks so weird. It literally looks like a tablet that's slapped on.
yeah, I am waiting for maybe a mid-cycle refresh for this interior that just blows us away. But I think the green textile with the orange contrast stitching, it just gives us a lot more character. I like it a lot more than all the other Explorers I've seen, including the ST model. And
Mm.
I think for $50,000, it's just this works.
Yeah, I completely agree. It definitely does. It's gonna be the one that actually I would think outsells like the regular XLT or even the limited trim, because like people are going towards a whole outdoorsy vibe these days,
Hmm.
and because of that, this should be more popular.
Yeah, and it makes sense too, because the reason you didn't buy a minivan is because you want something that looks like this. You don't
Exactly.
buy it. You don't go around a minivan and get something that looks like a Highlander LE because it looks dorkier than a minivan. Like I don't know. Nothing against Toyota, but I mean, I think the Sienna is just like a better looking car than
Yeah,
than the Highlander with its
definitely.
odd proportions. But this looks apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to add to the Explorer Timberline?
Not really. I think that about covers it. But good on Ford for bringing something kind of compelling to the market.
And I think the biggest thing is the price point, right? As you mentioned, it's under $51,000 Canadian, which is surprisingly good value for money. Because just before the show, we're taking a look at the Jeep Grand Cherokee, which is kind of similar, but it's only a two row,
Mhm.
and it's $5,000 more, 55, I think it was.
Yeah, for their off-road model. Now their off-road model is a lot more hardcore, but it's also not as practical and it's not as new. It's
Mhm.
based on a really old chassis, and this generation, well, the Grand Cherokee is coming up with a big refresh very soon. But Explorer and Grand Cherokee have always been cross-shopped, I think,
Mhm.
and among the suburban soccer mom crowd as well. Um, but but I think if it were my money, this makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Let's go on to the next topic, which is actually huge news. Um, I don't know how many people that's listening will be into NASCAR. NASCAR is huge in the US. I mean, there's one of the biggest spectator sports in the world.
Mhm.
But it's not that big here in Canada or, in places in Europe and whatnot. But this is actually huge because this is the next generation of cup cars. A lot of text here, but here's what you have to know. The vehicle is basically brand new. It's styled to look more like traditional vehicles that's on the road. So you see Camry, Mustangs, and Camaros. Not sure why the three are racing together, but it is what it is. That's the only three that's available. They have fully independent rear suspension
Hmm.
from moved from the current setup, which is a live axle with trailing arms. There is rack and pinion steering, whereas the previous one was a recirculating ball steering, which is what you find in like trucks and whatnot. And another big thing is the wheels. They're moving to aluminum wheels from steel wheels. So let's
Wow.
like these things are like, oh, just little things. But here, like, let me break it down. So the body is symmetrical now rather than before, where the right side and the left is asymmetrical, of course. And before it produces a little bit of drag on one side, and what it does, it actually helps you within those bent corners. But now being asymmetrical, the air flow should be a lot smoother. So when vehicles are passing you on the side, it should be safer for them for more competitive racing. The body is made from carbon fiber reinforced plastic panels, so it should be cheaper to replace if they get damaged. The body itself, or sorry, the chassis itself comes in three different parts. There's the main structure in the middle, front, and rear, and they're bolt-ons. So if there was any major incidents, you can just take that front clip off and replace it. The entire underbody is carbon fiber. There's a full under tray there, so it's a flat surface with a diffuser in the back. Unlike right now, where it's basically nothing, there's a diffuser now, a first for NASCAR. The hood has NACA ducts um, to extract heat from the engine itself. The engine, this is good. It's the same. It's still the 350 something cubic feet or cubic inch. Sorry, not cubic feet. That's a huge engine, 350 cubic feet. 350 ish cubic inch engine, still a V8, still makes 550 with a restrictor plate. And like, it's just so cool. Oh, yeah, the wheels. I was talking about that. The wheels, they're going from steel wheels that were 15 inches to the current 18-inch forged aluminum wheels made by BBS, still wrapped in Goodyear. They're wider as well, 305 before, 365 now. And they're center locked, 10,000 RPM impact gun, not RPM, sorry, pounds of force or whatever to actually drill that on. So pit stops should be faster now, 5 lugs compared to 1. Like, these are really, really cool aspects. But the first year that NASCAR is coming out, this Gen 7, it's going to be ridiculous because every single team is trying to set up this brand new car. And it's going to be the most exciting year of NASCAR in a very, very long time. That's what I'm most excited about. Because, like, with a lot of other sports, Indy, F1, the cars, yes, they change gradually over the years, but this is massive. This is a massive change. How they set up their suspension is completely different from what they had before.
Mhm.
I'm very interested to actually watch not only their circular tracks, which they're going to be mostly of, but they're going to do circuits as well. And that's going to be interesting. Cars are going to be actual, cars now with independent rear suspension, transaxle. So the trans is not attached to the engine, it's in the back for better weight distribution. Like, these are really amazing details for NASCAR.
Yeah, big upgrade. Finally, kind of catching up with the rest of motorsports in a sense. Um, it's not quite as cutting edge as F1 or Le Mans or anything else,
Definitely
but
not.
NASCAR has always kind of been made to be that challenge, right? It's an endurance thing. It's really a test of that driver and the pit crew, and it's respectable in its own right. I think it's not mechanically the most compelling setup, but yeah, like you said, it's gonna be insane with all the different setups. Is no one knows what's gonna work, and what may work in testing, it may not work in the real world. How do we cope with little bumps and whatnot? We'll see. Yeah, I think you know, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's gonna be very exciting for the whole industry, and it at a great time too, because with the whole pandemic, everyone is so down on, and having motorsports, at least in the states, especially, I think is gonna be a big spirit booster.
Absolutely. I'm I'm not a big fan of NASCAR. I watch like highlights because it's that's
It's
the time I
exciting.
have. Highlights, it's great to just get a little tidbits of everything. I'm the one that can sit down in the morning and watch an actual F1 race. I can't go through the entire NASCAR. But now I feel like I want to, at least for the first few races, because of just like how hectic it possibly can be.
It's always hectic, and that's kind of what everyone is hoping for is, that crazy crash or someone's doing like a, I don't know, 3,600 degree turn, like spin out. Um, yeah, no, I think so. We've got Camaro, Mustang, and TRD. Is there anything else?
No, that's it.
That's just the three.
It's just
Okay.
everyone else pulled out of NASCAR years back, and yeah. Oh, one more thing. There's a rear view camera now
Well,
because
that
they
makes sense.
they lowered the roof line. I think like an inch and a half, and because of the reduced roof line, rearward visibility is going to be less. So they put in a rear view camera so that they can see behind them.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Again, it's like, who would have thought? Again,
it's it's
this is
little things.
groundbreaking stuff.
It's definitely little things, but it's really exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like every NASCAR fan right now, they're going absolutely crazy of all this news that's coming. But I think that's really all I gotta say.
Yeah. Honestly, don't know too much about it, so I can't really comment.
No worries. All right, let's move on from NASCAR to something well just as fiery and dangerous.
Your favorite Korean automaker?
They are my favorite Korean automaker. I mean, there's two really. I mean, who else other than Hyundai and Kia?
Genesis.
The same umbrella.
Daewoo?
I was gonna say Daewoo. They don't
They
exist
still make
anymore.
some GM cars, I think, over here. But no, yeah. Hyundai recalling over 390,000 vehicles for possible engine fires. Now, if this sounds like deja vu, it is because it's basically an extension of a recall that we heard a few months ago, back in late 2020. Now, the 390,000 cars. The biggest portion of that is going to be the Santa Fe Sport, which is about 200,000 of that 390,000. The Santa Fe Sport from 2013 to 2015 basically had a brake fluid issue where if it leaks onto the ABS computer just below it, it can cause an electrical short because brake fluid obviously very corrosive, and that can lead to some kind of electrical fire, which you know not good, um, obviously, but the fix before was okay, we'll replace these computers, I guess. Now they've added to that recall, and they're now changing a fuse, which I'm guessing that means they're replacing it from say a 10 amp fuse to a 5 amp fuse or something like that, where it will blow that fuse and it will cut power to that module before things get worse.
Before more
Um,
current. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, so if you're only getting a low current to it, then that might help. But I mean, it doesn't sound like much really, but
Doesn't
and
really sound like a fix.
it doesn't sound like a fix. Yeah, it's like, why is it leaking there? Can you relocate this computer? It doesn't say that there's anything about that. It's just saying they're going to replace it if necessary. So they will check out your car, and you're supposed to park it outside until you get it fixed. Because if you burn down a building or whatever, I guess that's not on Hyundai because we've warned you now. Um, it's caused 18 fires in the U.S. No injuries so far, luckily, which is surprising because I mean, a whole car catching on fire, you're setting buildings on fire and other cars on fire as well. I'm guessing. Um, it's kind of sad. I think it's like kind of oversight, and they're not really committing to a real fix, in my opinion. I think
Yeah.
changing a fuse, it's a hack fix that you know brake fluid shouldn't be leaking to begin with. I don't know. Um, I don't know if the details of this issue are out there, but I don't know if that's just because the reservoir is leaking or master cylinder is leaking, or maybe it's just wear and tear over time that cause it to leak, which does happen. Rust around that brake cylinder area does happen in any car. But I guess it is just the computer. But you think maybe like protecting that computer some way, like
Yeah, just
maybe you don't have to relocate it and rewire everything, but maybe you could just cover it,
flashing or something on it to just
prevent it.
protect it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think people aren't that aware of it, and the problem is like, let's say I buy this car, um, you know, a few years down the road, a used car, and I don't know about it, and I'm not really on top of, I'm not buying it from a dealer. I'm just, picking it up for cheap use off of Facebook Marketplace or something, and I don't know this car has this kind of somewhat fatal flaw. Um, I don't think this stuff is a real fix.
No.
The other issue or the other recall is not related to brake fluid so much, but it is also relating to fire, which is the 2019 and 2020 Elantra, the 2019 to 21 Kona and Veloster models. So basically all the Kona and Veloster models
With
with
the
the
2
two
liter
liter
engine.
engine. Yeah. So the piston rings may not have been properly heat treated, which can cause engine damage, oil leaks, and possible fires. Piston rings being pretty hard to access. You know, I don't know how they're going to get out of this because I'm guessing it was just cheap supplier or something and just cut corners here and there, and that's caused 5 fires so far, no injuries, but these cars are still relatively new. As you wear through these engines more, it's going to become more of an issue. So the fix right now is they're going to check out your engine, make sure it's fine. If it isn't, they'll replace those. Now that's going to be a huge warranty job, which techs generally don't like because warranty work always pays less. It's a lot of work taking apart an engine and putting new piston rings in it. So from the service side, they're probably not happy about it. Um, and just from a cost perspective, for a whole manufacturer to cover, I don't know how many engines are affected by this. At least with the 2019 and 21 model years, but that sounds like it's really expensive.
I actually was thinking back. I was like, because I had an Optima before, a 2010 Kia Optima. I
Mm.
had the 2 liter turbo in that. And I remember there was a recall on that as well for faulty fuel lines. They could crack and have a risk of a fire.
Yeah, and so the AP is reporting that over more than 5 years, we've had more than 8 million Hyundai and Kia models that were affected by these recalls. Now, it doesn't mean there's any damage, but you as an owner, you've had to bring that in and get that resolved. My Rav4 has a recall. That's for the fuel gauge. It's not really an issue. I'm not even like worried. I'm not gonna even bring it in. Like it's like if you're experiencing this issue, you can bring it in, kind of thing. It's really minor. My Prius had a recall for one of the halogen light bulbs 10 years down the road. I think my car was at least 9 years old at that point, and they're like,
For a
"Oh, one
bulb?
of your low beams may wear prematurely by Toyota standards," and it's like that doesn't, from an owner's perspective, that doesn't hurt my faith in the company whatsoever.
No.
I think you know a bad fuel gauge doesn't really matter, but this is huge, right?
But
Like
8
engine
million
fires.
recalls?
8 million recalls, so that's a lot of owners affected, and
You know,
yeah, it's like
that's
an engine fires, right? Like, okay, if a recall's over, oh, my Bluetooth acts up or my Apple CarPlay acts up, that's
that's
one thing, but
that's annoyance.
it's
Yes.
an annoying thing. But engine fires, come on, like,
That's yeah, that's a little bit worse.
yeah, and I mean, Hyundai's fought so hard to kind of improve their brand reputation over the years, um, but I think even just from working on their cars, I do notice that they cut corners here and there, and like they burn like because we do a lot of lighting and stuff. They burn bulbs like no tomorrow. Like customers keep coming back, and we replace them with halogen bulbs, LED bulb. Doesn't matter what you put in; they just burn through. I always see Hyundai's with burnt out, either a tail light that's burnt out or a low beam that's burnt out. And I think that's due to some cost cutting somewhere with their electricals that just not so good. And this ultimately is going to affect a lot of things, right? It's not just a safety issue, but also from an owner's perspective, this brand now has a more tainted name to it, and that's going to affect your depreciation. That's going to affect everything from the buying purchase. Um, lease rates are going to be worse because their residual is going to be lower because their people don't feel comfortable, or less people feel comfortable driving an 8-year-old car with faulty piston rings.
Yeah.
It's just it's sad, but at the same time, who knows? It may not really matter. For me, I think it matters because I don't I wouldn't let this slide so easily. I think, um, at least they're pushing with electric cars, but looking at their sales figures, however, it's like it doesn't really matter so far or
Not
yet,
so much. Yeah.
not yet. So for Hyundai America, best March. March 2021 was the best March they've ever had. April 2021 was the best April they've ever had, and we're talking huge increases in sales, like over 100% increase in sales, um, with eco-friendly vehicles leading that charge. So, which models are those? What we have the Kona Electric, Ionic. What
Yeah.
else?
Kia, the Soul
Soul
EV,
EV,
and then
yeah.
Nero.
Nero, yeah. Last year it was hard to get those cars. I think that may be why this year we're seeing an increase. Um, so I mean, still strong sales, and I think a lot of people do see the value in these cars, but
Mhm.
it just kind of sucks because they really put out some attractive products, and they're it's kind of like, oh, you're back to your old ways kind of thing. It's like that X that like says they'll change and then they don't really change. you know
That's a great way to put it.
they're better dressed now,
But
and they
but
take care of
but you go
themselves. They're
back
more efficient.
anyways because you like how it used to be.
Well, it's maybe not that far, but but yeah,
You
I think I don't know. Would you I know you had an experience with Kia back in 2011. That was
yeah,
uh,
it was a while back. I mean, I had some engine problems and I had a lot of dealer issues. That's why I
mhm.
sold it and got myself a Honda. Um, not to go into the entire story, but I lowered the vehicle on springs and the dealer voided the entire vehicle's warranty.
Which is not
So
how warranty is supposed to work.
so I was like, well, if you're going to void the entire warranty, I don't want this car. And they're like, well, too bad. You have a finance on it. Do whatever you want. So I brought it up with Kia Canada. They resolved it. They said only the suspension components are voided, which I 100% understand. But then I kind of lost faith in the dealers. So I was like, you know what? It's fine. I'll move on. Got myself an Accord and lowered that instead.
Yeah, just cut your losses. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think didn't that car have other issues? Like,
I had some engine issues. The turbo motor was it was consuming a lot more oil than it should. Uh, well, like it was consuming oil, which you really shouldn't.
in a
I
brand
had
new
that
car, yeah.
and it was starting to smoke from the exhaust as well. So I knew
Oh
there were
damn.
some issues with it. So I just got rid of it. It was just easier to deal with than dealing with all the problems that I had.
And that's the thing. I'm like, I always look at what used Hyundai's go for, and it's like I think my mentality has always been you save a little bit up front, but you lose out in the long run.
Mhm.
You might save, for 2 or 3 grand less, you're getting way more features for the money.
Yeah.
Then when you try to go sell that car or trade in that car, and then you're like, oh, why is that car not worth anything compared to that Honda or Toyota that I thought was really expensive 5 years ago? Um, and that's kind of where I always draw the line with Hyundai. It's like I don't know if I can put my own money into one of these cars, as attractive as they are and as well priced as they are, because I don't know if where I will be. Because like looking at like even the Veloster N, right? Everyone bought that car because it's cheaper than a Type R. That's the only reason I think you really buy a Veloster N, right?
Yeah,
Like let's be honest.
yeah,
You might not think that that's why you bought that car, but
it's a reason.
I think it's a very compelling reason that okay, the Type R is 10 grand more. A 2017 Type R goes for 39,000 used.
Hmm.
It went for what, 43 new,
40 something, yeah.
in low 40s before the whole Honda Sensing update. And because there is a huge fan base behind it, there is the name just represents so much. Like that brand value compared to Veloster Ns, which are already depreciating relatively quickly, like a 2019 is what, under 30K. Um, and they're gonna keep dropping. That's the thing, is not only you know, th- I think after 5 years you'll realize that that Veloster actually costs you more than a Type R. Um,
Yeah, didn't we find one for 28,000?
Something like that, and that was just
Yeah,
local, right? That's not
yeah,
even searching Canada or North
yeah.
America wide. Um, which that's always been the holdup for me, is like the Highlander. As much as I don't really care for it, the Highlander is always compelling because of the resale value, especially a hybrid Highlander. Like it's
Mhm.
insane how much that car is worth, and
Yeah,
that's what makes these cars really cheap in the long run. Like lease rates, they may not be that attractive, or finance interest rates are always terrible on them, but you get your money back. Like that's the only reason people buy. And at the same time, I think it's kind of sad because a Tacoma is not the most capable truck in any sense of the word,
not at all.
but there's nothing really that redeeming about it. But it does have insane resale value, which ultimately, that matters a lot, because um, that's if you drive that truck for 5 years, put 100,000 clicks on it, it costs you next to nothing. Like you can't even lease, you know, a base model Honda Fit for how little that car depreciates. And that
Yeah,
that stuff matters, like in the long run, as far as calculations go.
one of my friends sold his Tacoma TRD Pro.
Mhm.
He sold uh a last year's TRD Pro for a newer TRD Pro. He didn't have to pay anything on top.
How does that make any sense? Like,
He sold it privately and bought the new
yeah,
one from a dealer. He didn't
yeah.
sell it back to the dealer because, when you sell a car back to a dealer,
Dealer's
you
gotta
always get
make
ripped
money.
off. But he sold it privately. He got top dollar for it, took the money, and went and bought a brand new Tacoma. No problem.
Mhm.
He didn't mind the color of the new one. I think he went from the voodoo blue to the cement gray. I
Mhm.
could be wrong. I can't remember exactly which way he went or the color, but um, yeah, he just upgraded the color or upgraded the year by one with absolutely zero cost. So like that entire year, he drove it for free.
Pretty much, pretty much.
Yeah,
There's other costs, obviously,
yeah,
like taxes and registration, whatever. But grand scheme of it, like compared to depreciation, it's still nothing. Um, and that matters. Like that's kind of huge to look at with any buying purchase. I think that's something reviewers don't talk about enough, is what's this car going to be worth? Like everyone talks about, okay, you're getting this many standard features for 30K. Like the RAV4, RAV4 is the only one that uses a turnkey, I think, for their base model, midsize, small crossover, or whatever you want to call it. It's awful value for the money, but then you look at what a used, like a 2015 base model RAV4 with hubcap sell for, and it's more than like a new Tucson. Like it doesn't make sense. Like it shouldn't make sense, but it, like, there is a reason these cars are just so popular.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of popular, let's move on to the final topic here. is Mazda.
It's always Mazda with
So, just this past week, I released the Mazda CX-30 Turbo long-term review. So Mazda Canada lent me their CX-30 Turbo for a good month to really just experience with. I had it for actually almost a month and a half. Great car, loved every bit of it. A little too small overall. I mean, it is a subcompact technically, a little too small for me, but I think it fits in so many people's kind of like price bracket and just overall usability of the vehicle. The turbo motor in such a small package, amazing. 310 pound-feet of torque. Like it pulls, it hauls, it really does. The 6 speed that's on there, sure, it may not be the best considering like, others have 8 speeds or 10 speeds, but it's fast. It downshifts whenever it needs to, and it goes. Just it's such an amazing car to drive, and the interior materials are just so nice. It was just a great experience, other than the fact it's a little too small. But other than that, perfect vehicle.
Yeah, I don't think it's too small per se. Like I think for your family, it's kind of like the right size.
Yeah,
When
it's
you have
not
two kids,
bad.
it's probably too small.
Yeah, it's not bad at one child. Stroller in the back, I still fit it, and I can still fit groceries beside it. But when I want to do grocery runs at Costco, then it gets a little tough.
Hmm.
Uh, but like it's we talked about this before, like a long time ago. Mazda vehicles, like they tend to tune their cars like just the drivability factor, the fun factor, and it's quite high. But at what cost? Generally, all their vehicles are smaller than their competition. CX-9, CX-5, CX-30,
Hmm.
they're always smaller than the competition.
Yeah,
And they're smaller and they're lighter. It does help with the fun to drive factor. It certainly does. But the cost is it is smaller. The CX-9 is one of the smaller three-row SUVs. CX-5, it's like the rear seats are not cramped, but they're not like the CRV where you can sit and
exactly.
lounge in.
Yeah, and the trunk is not as tall or wide. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's really necessary to make the car smaller. Like I don't think it really correlates necessarily that it has to be, you know, more cramped than a competition to be fun to drive. Like I think fun to drive that comes through your suspension tuning, your steering tuning, your transmission tuning, and obviously your power delivery, tires, whatever you. And none of that relates to the size. So, well, why the compromise? I don't really understand. Obviously, weight is the only factor that does play a role, but we're talking not significant weight differences in these segments, right?
No,
It's
definitely
within
not.
probably 100 or 200 pounds of anything else. It's not particularly lightweight, and it's not
I
using
mean, the
power.
CX-30 is 3,500 pounds.
Okay, that's not light at all.
No.
For this size of vehicle. Um, and so I think that will always be the holdup, right? Because people buy a car to fill their needs. Like that has to be number one. As far as the buying decisions go, does this car check off whatever boxes I need? I don't necessarily go shop for a small crossover thinking about what's the most fun to drive for them because I'm buying a crossover because I need it to be practical. The fun to drive stuff is a bonus, but it has to
Mhm.
be great on gas, has to be roomy, and it's okay on gas, right? The turbo.
It's not horrible. It's rated at 10.5 in the city and 7.9 on the highway.
Hmm.
I mean, with me driving it and like I want to experience the power a little bit more, let's say. And when filming, I have the car on and whatnot. I only average like I think 11 something
Hmm.
overall.
Are you
And
using
it's
premium or 87?
87 only. I
Okay.
never once put premium in it because for the extra 10 pound-feet of torque, it really wasn't worth it for me.
Hmm. but it's also you can't really compare it to anything else because power wise, this is like a hot
Oh,
rod compared to anything else in its segment,
I
right?
mean, this is so much faster. I mean, you can compare this to like the Crosstrek. The Crosstrek, you get two engine options: a 2 liter or a 2.5. The 2 liter
Both
takes
are slow.
the 2 liter literally takes 10 seconds to reach 62 miles per hour. Literally 10 seconds. It's
Mhm,
so ridiculously slow. This is like, I think it was 6 seconds or something like that. I can't remember. But
mhm,
it's not about just only that, 0 to 60. That passing power, that's what, most people would
mhm.
actually feel. And like when you get on the highway, my wife loved this vehicle because she was driving to, well, we're just in the process of moving. So we're driving home a lot from our current place or second home. And from that, we actually had to go on the highway quite a bit. So every time she merged on the highway, she literally floored it. And you can just see her smile because of how much power there was.
Mhm.
And like it just felt great.
Yeah, so much confidence with that extra power. I think that is something that a lot of. I think it's because everyone is focusing on electric technology right now, that gas engines aren't getting the that much attention. Um, which Mazda, for some reason, they're focusing on. Okay, how do we make our mid-size crossovers super powerful, rather than everyone else kind of looking at electrification to fix that issue and also improve fuel economy. Um,
So
they're kind of deviating a little bit.
we got to remember Mazda's a much smaller company than others. So compared to like Toyota or Honda, Mazda's tiny, and because of that, they have limited funds. And when you have limited funds, it's kind of what you do. You take what you have and you shove it in whatever you can. This motor was originally in the CX-9. Then they put in the Mazda 6 and the CX-5, and then the Mazda 3, and now the CX-30. The only two vehicles that in the entire Mazda lineup that doesn't get this engine is the Mazda CX-3 and the MX-5.
Mhm.
That's it. I mean, because they are a low cost, not low cost, but like
Low
just
budget.
low budget. Yeah, exactly. Low budget company. They just don't have the money for that.
Mhm.
They are coming up with an electric vehicle, the MX-30. They're going with a very different direction with that. I'm interested to see what will happen. I don't think it's going to go that well here in North America, just because in North America, when we buy electric vehicles, we want something that, well, that has a lot more electrical range than what the
Mhm.
MX-30 can offer.
Yeah.
And, everyone wants the 300, 400-mile Tesla.
Well, you
MX-30 is
can
going to
get
give you.
that. You can get that with the spinning Dorito to just keep it running.
Yeah, but
Um,
I mean, the spinning Dorito, it basically is the BMW i3 in a Mazda package,
yeah, which
right?
flopped completely in North America.
Yeah, but in my opinion, the MX-30 looks a lot better than the i3.
It does, and it makes sense for certain markets. I think, yeah, here we have longer commutes. Everything is further away. Like today, I just ran a bunch of errands earlier in the Rav4, and it's just like, oh, okay. I like how fuel efficient this car is, and I ran, 100 kilometers on like $10 of gas, which I think is is very reasonable. I'm like, oh, I got a lot done for $10. I'm like, I'm pretty okay with that.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas, if I had 124-mile range, then that's kind of pushing it.
Yeah,
If I can't charge it at home, that would be an issue. But yeah, CX-30, I don't know. Could you see yourself owning this? You had
yeah,
a CX-3 before.
yep, yep. I had a CX3,
Yeah.
but I got rid of it because it was too small. Um, but the CX-30, like, I, I think, I think right now I would want something a little bit bigger, just because like I am living with family and we do travel a lot together. And because of that, I kind of want like a CX-9 because it makes more sense for
Hmm.
us. But I don't think it's a bad car. I think it's something that a lot
It's
of
a
people
niche car. I
it is
think that's
very
what it is.
niche. It is very niche because not everyone needs that extra power, and not
Yeah.
everyone wants that premium interior that the CX-30 gives you.
Hmm.
Because more like my wife, when she drove the Crosstrek, she felt that it was slow, even with the 2.5 liter. She hated it, but she loved the bigger windows. My wife is only 5'2", so she's shorter, and she liked the bigger windows. So she has better visibility out.
Hmm.
CX-30 doesn't provide that. So there are little things, right? And what are you like willing to compromise for that extra power?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like something like a CRV turbo, just like, well, they're all turbo, but the CRV makes sense. Now it's a little bit older, but obviously the next generation one is going to be great. For me, it would be hard to pick this over that.
Well, this
Or
wouldn't be like CRV. This will be more HRV.
price point wise, though, I mean, a CX-30 Turbo GT is right in line with a
Yeah,
pretty decently equipped
but
CRV.
you wouldn't compare the turbo. I mean, you would probably compare the regular CX-30 to the HRV, non-turbo. Because yeah, you're right. With the turbo motor, it gets pricey, so that's why it's in line with the CRV. But
Yeah.
to compete with like the segment, you have like the regular engine, the non-turbo, because that versus like the Rogue Sport or Qashqai, it's right
Mhm.
in line. Same thing with like the Celtos, right in line with that price point.
Around like mid 30s ish.
Mhm.
Yeah. Whereas this one with the 2.5 are just below 40.
Yeah,
Yeah. Which I think for this size of vehicle is quite a bit. But yeah,
It-
again, it's a niche car.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mazda, like their blurb when they sent this out, they're not competing with Honda, Nissan, and whatnot. They're trying to compete actually with like Mercedes and BMW.
Hmm.
I can kind of see that. I mean, the GLA, the X1, it's very similar. Actually, probably closer to like X2. It's very similar. They all have a similar power figures. And the interior, I would say this feels better than the X1 and the GLA, in my opinion.
Kind of indifferent about it. It's
Like,
it's in there, but I don't know. Is it a smart move to compete against engineering giants
hmm,
like Mercedes and BMW and Audi, where you're a little guy versus competing with the mainstream, which is like the Kias and the Hyundais and the Nissans, fighting for market share there. I don't know if it's a smart move because I think people that buy a BMW they just want a BMW. People that buy a Mercedes they just want the Mercedes.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
For that 90% of that buying purchase, like that process is about the brand and which dealership you're walking into.
But for those people that are looking at the GLA but are like, I don't really care for the brand, but I want those
Mhm.
features, that's what the Mazda CX-30 is for. It's for people that may not be able to afford those luxury brands, but are looking at those features like, I really would like that. I want, the soft Napa leather. I want that turbo motor. That's where Mazda is trying to come in right now.
Yeah.
Same thing
That's
with
what Yeah, I think the thing is also have to consider used cars as well, and I think it wasn't so much of an issue before. Like you wouldn't really compare a 5-year-old something or other, but now that used car prices have kind of gone insane, like it just shows that there is like quite a demand for used cars.
hmm,
Um, yeah, I don't know. That might be a topic for another day, but used car prices this year have just like blown me away in a sense. Last year we had some deals. Like there were there was stuff that was I guess like COVID sales, and now it's just gone the complete opposite direction. But I think we could talk about that. We can save it for another day.
yeah, we're about at the hour mark anyways. So yeah, let's anything else you want to add into today's session though?
No, I think we've covered what we needed to cover.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much everyone for watching. I hope you have an amazing day and we'll come back to some auto news next week.
Happy Cinco de Mayo, by the way.
Take care everyone.